Hey guys, welcome to Whiskey and Synths, Slanjava. My name's David and this is the show that blends whiskey drinking with music making. So I'm excited today because we're going to have a look at Justice's new track. It's absolutely amazing. I'm so excited for it, and it's called One Night All Night. So if you haven't heard it yet, go and listen to it. It's absolutely brilliant. They've got a whole new album coming out, and today we're going to dissect what makes this track special and what we know about how it was made. And if you're interested in digging deeper, I've put the sources to all the information I got in this video down the bottom in the comments. So yeah, let's jump into it. And one of the main things they said that they wanted with this track and the album was taking a new influence for them anyway, and it was more like a 90s gabber kind of rave sound, which seems surprising, and it's hard to hear it in this track so much. But this is a genre that was I think originated in Holland. It's famous for distorted kick drums, very digital sounding samples and stabs. And Justice actually said it's funny because those stabs, stab sounds that they use in rave music, a lot of them were originally from disco tracks, and Justice is famous for being influenced by 70s disco as well. So that's quite a cool thing actually, and it's this confrontation between organic sounds of the disco influence and harsher gabber style sounds that make the track kind of quite interesting actually. And you'll hear that in the arrangement as it plays through, and it's something they've talked about a lot in interviews. So that contrast in that kind of thing is something you can apply to your own music, or if you want to make music a little bit like this. And they actually said they even wrote a version of this track at like 200 BPM, like really crazy fast, and then slowed it down to a more disco tempo. And we'll find out more soon about the other iterations they had of the track and stuff like that. Speaking of the disco influence, for every track on the album, including this one, they said that they actually made a full-blown disco version of it with a band, with real drums, real bass guitar, real kind of keyboards, someone playing the keyboards and stuff, which is a big effort to go to. But if you have a bit of musicianship yourself, or you have friends who are musicians and can record even some loops of actual musicians playing, putting that in your own music and sort of sampling that yourself is what could help get that Justice sound. And that's one reason this track feels quite organic at times, because they did make an entire version of this track, but a disco version. And I'm really hoping if they release their album and then do maybe later on a bonus disc album or something, they'll put out the full disco versions of it one day. I doubt they will, but that would be so cool to hear the original versions behind the sort of finished track. When it comes to mixing the track, they said sometimes a mix can sound so perfect, but it's just not quite right. And they often had to go back to their previous demos, which sounded much scratchier, and be like, what was it that gave that demo such character and made us follow through with the idea? So it's something when you're mixing to remember. It's not just about getting it clinically perfect or like sounding like literally as professional as possible. I mean, it's kind of important, but you've got to retain the character and feeling of the song, because at the end of the day, music's kind of about communication and expressing how you feel or what you want to say. And even if you're not consciously doing that, it sort of spontaneously comes out of you when you're making music. So when you get to the mixing stage, it's good to remember, like, oh, I do still need to capture that. And they told a story how they're at the studio. The track was sounding perfect, really good, but there's something missing. So they worked on it for ages, and they got their friend come round, and he actually just got all the gains, because they had a big mixing desk, and saturated everything, basically trashed the mix, they said. And he's like, you see what I've done there? Sometimes you need to trash it to go back to square one. So sometimes you do need to abandon your mix to go back to square one. And they said in a story that some of the tracks on the album, including this one, ended up having to be a bit like that. So guys, we're halfway through this. I've got 3 more main points to go on how Justice made this track. But if you need help with your own track, I am happy to help out on a free 1-to-1 Zoom call. I mean, I can only do 4 of these a month, so be quick, click below and register, and I'll send you a Zoom link and help you with your own music. We'll analyze it on the call. I'll give you like a step-by-step plan to follow to make it better and get it to completion. And then you'll even get a rewatch of the call. And I do this because I want to help music makers like you. It's something I would have loved when I was younger. So yeah, if you think that'll help you, click below and let's get it organized. So before we go into other things Justice said, I thought I'd give you guys a quick rundown of my own kind of analysis of the track and a kind of bullet pointed stuff as we went through and tried to think of practical things you could do if you want to get this sound yourself. So definitely in the track, there's a thick unison style bass. So if you're using presets, you want to choose one that's got a unison sound to it, a lot of chorus on it, but probably parallel chorus rather than like as an insert. And it's kind of got maybe a saw wave, harsh kind of tone, maybe combined with some subby kind of sine wave sounds. So definitely you might want to layer up your bass with a sub bass. So the harsher sound is a little bit more in the low mids, and then the sub bass is in the sub kind of part of it as well. But yeah, thick unison bass, maybe on something like a Prophet or a sequential circuit style synth, or maybe a big Korg kind of sound. I find those kind of synths have a lot harsher or rockier tones, and sometimes Justice will be known to run those synths through like amps and tape emulations, so feel free to whack some effects on it as well. There's obviously a lot of filtering on the vocals. They actually said with the vocals, well, I'm going to come to it later, they used it a bit like a sample. So feel free to filter your vocals and add automation in there. And if you've got a MIDI controller like that, it's good to record in the automation more than draw it in. And that gets you a more human feel, something that Justice always wants to preserve. There's definitely a choir like pad in the background as well. I only noticed on closer listen today, and it sort of evolves into a more like synth like pad at points. So that's quite a cool one I noticed. Definitely worth thinking of putting that in. It maybe sounded like a keyboard style choir, like old school kind of preset or something, rather than like an actual choir. But I think it's worth thinking of putting that in. I noticed the drum sounds swap between live and electronic drum sounds. So in your track, you're going to want a mixture of both if you're going for this sort of sound. There was also a hi-hat that sounded like reversed a little bit, but not fully. So I wondered if they'd layered a sample of a hi-hat hitting and then quieter in the background, a reverse one of it, because it went and it kind of gave the track such cool energy. I love that. Looking at my list, I also put down they weren't scared of using digital sounding ARPs for the highs as well. It kind of filled in the highs, these kind of more digital sounding ARPs, and that goes back to the earlier point about contrast and stuff. And when the bass guitar came in, this is more to do with the arrangement. It just had such a nice break from like the heavier part of the track as well. So I thought that was like a really nice touch and really good example of when they changed that up. Stuff we talked about earlier, really. When they change section, Justice are always putting in little drum fills or maybe gaps in the instrumentation, and this can really help signal a change in your going from section A to section B of your song. So always remember to put nice drum fills in or extra sounds, or even take sounds out just the bar before it changes section as well. And variation is something Justice do amazing as well. Although they use loops and it's quite electronic and repetitive, there's a lot of variation every so often, little sounds here and there. Even chucking a beat repeat on a sample can help with that variation as well. And then what else have we got? This is my the mix. So there's a lot of space in the mix as well. Like, because it sounds so big, this track, but actually when you listen to it, there's not loads and loads of instruments going on at once. And this helps avoid a thing called masking, where two instruments layer over each other and actually it muddies the mix. So it's just everything on it sounds big, but there's just not lots of it, if that makes sense. And then to fill out the space in the background, there's some nice, very subtle delays and reverbs on the vocal. And they are on return tracks, I think, and quieter in the mix. And you can almost kind of hear them just in the background. And it almost fills the space, almost like dub music does. It was like a cool touch, the way they processed the vocals there as well. And then near the end, we've got the strings coming in, so an organic sounding instrument. If you don't have access to a string quartet or whatever, remember Spitfire Audio do the free Labs plugin with loads of free, very realistic sounding strings and other instruments. So that's a good trick if you do want to add these more organic sounds to your productions like Justice have, but they're not available to you. Spitfire Audio Labs, you can get some amazing free plugins there as well. So I did mention they treated the Tame Impala vocal like a sample. And what's cool is, yeah, they've looped it and taken it, and they said to Kevin Parker that, look, we want this to be like, we have discovered an old sample on a vinyl, but it's you. So they got him to sing various things, and they did it all in the studio together, actually, rather than sending it. And Justice said with all their collaborators, they worked with that on this album. There's quite a few collaborators on it, and they said that they just find it's much better to work together in person. They really value that kind of, energy you get, better body language communication than if you were just doing it over Zoom. So if you're working with other people, it's great to try and work together in the same room. And it sometimes is more difficult to organize than just doing it over Zoom or sending files, but I think it's more rewarding. And Justice almost showed that with this album, that the collaborations are amazing on it, and this track with Tame Impala is just class. And they said in regards to how it played out, the track, that arrangement, they didn't want to stick to verse, chorus, double chorus, kind of a classic song arrangement, and they were trying to really unlearn that on this track and other ones in the album. So don't be afraid to play around with arrangement and do things you wouldn't normally do with that arrangement as well. And finally, they said they had an almost unhealthy relationship with details. So they had some tracks apparently had 200 versions of the same song. So this one might have had that as well. So it just shows you, don't be afraid to keep reworking stuff or putting stuff to the side. I think it's always worked. Don't trash stuff and delete it, but definitely keep different versions of it. It means being quite organized. I remember Bicep talked about this as well. You have to be quite organized if you've got that many demos. Otherwise, they're just all scattered over the computer. You don't know what's going on. So definitely try and keep track of it some way. Some people are going to love Google Docs. Some people are going to love pen and paper. Whatever works for you. But definitely worth keeping track of it. And it just shows how, if you've got thousands of unfinished Ableton projects, that's okay, because even the biggest artists have iterations of stuff. But don't ever think that it's just rubbish. You might eventually come back to that one project and be like, mate, that drum beat on that will match this cool synth bass riff I wrote on this. And then that's how your tracks can build sometimes. So that's quite a cool thing to have, that demo archive vault mentality. Try and get stuff finished, but also pay attention to the detail, and don't put out things that you're not fully comfortable with. It's good to practice finishing things. I wouldn't say never finish stuff, but it's good to have that balance where you're like, this is good. A way to look at it, I'd say, is this is as good as I can get it right now. Your skills are always going to develop, you're always going to get better, but get things to the very best point you can, and then go with it. And I think that's true attention to detail. And as you go on later, you might learn more about different details, but just get it to the best point you can. It's hopefully the takeaway from that. So I hope you've enjoyed this analysis and breakdown of Justice's track. I absolutely love it. One night, all night, featuring Tame Impala. I can't wait for the album. I'm so excited. Their set at Coachella is, some clips of it are up on YouTube as well. And like I said, if you want to find out more about what I've talked about in this video, all the links are below to where I found out the information. And if you want help with your track, you can also link below. You can get in touch and I'll give you a one-to-one Zoom lesson where we go over your track, help you with it, give you a list on what you need to do with it. And that is just a free gift to you, because I'm just grateful for you to watch until the end of the video, and want to say, enjoy your synths, enjoy your whiskeys, way. You can tell I finished this one. And have a great time. Cheers, guys. Thanks everyone for listening in. We'll catch you later, whether you're on the video or the audio version of this. Appreciate your ears. Catch you later. Cheers. Whiskey.